Okay, so on the orientation pathway, I wanted to be able to walk you through the 7 principles that we'll be exploring so that you have an idea of what the content will really be walking you through. So the first week is arrival. The entire pathway is 8 weeks long, and the first week is where we arrive. And arrival is really all based around safety and exploring what safety means like to you personally, what safety means like in your body, and where that safety has broken down along your journey of life. Because if we don't have safety, it's really challenging to begin to feel like we can explore. And so really the caveat to creativity, to exploration is safety. So that's where we begin our journey on this pathway. Then the second week is where we start to enter into the first actual principle, which is presence, where we really help orient into what actually is presence. What does it mean to be present? And the thing that is so cool about this particular pathway is that no matter where you are on your journey, you can always deepen into these principles even more fully. And so it's going to look different for each person depending on where you are in your journey, how these principles hit you. But that will be the first place, is actually arriving to this now moment. So first we're safe, then we arrive to this now moment. Then the third week, we step into discernment, which is starting to understand the different voices that narrate our lives. We have the voice of the mind, we have the voice of the body, we have the voice of our inner knowing, and then we have the voice of conditioning, of all of these voices that have been aspects of our journey and our lives. And so that third week is really about starting to bring awareness and deepening that awareness around those different voices and how they impact the way that we move through our day-to-day life. Then I'm gonna have to keep my fingers so I can keep track. The fourth week is entering into remembrance. And remembrance is starting to kind of go back to the core truth of who you are. So we've just kind of moved through entering into the moment. Now, what are these voices? And remembrance is like, who am I before these voices existed? And so a lot of times it's kind of going back to that little child in us and really starting to explore, like, what are my innate passions? What does light me up? What feels true to me? What feels honest to me? And really deepening that remembrance of the core truth of who you are. And then we move into week 5, which is aliveness. So aliveness is an interesting principle because it's starting to realize, okay, I've gone through this building principles of coming in this now moment, discerning where these voices are coming from, remembering like what it really feels like to be me. And then it's entering into, how do I start to really live in my own life experience without judging it as positive or negative? And so it's really entering into a space of really starting to explore what restrictions or frames I've put around what's good or what's bad around my own personal behavior and what I do. And then the next week we move into embodiment, which is actually getting in our bodies and exploring what our relationship to our bodies are, and starting to explore that our bodies are actually an entry point into deepening our relationship with ourselves, where a lot of times we've seen our bodies as kind of almost like a block to connecting with ourselves. So then we explore our bodies, and then we move into inner authority, which is really starting to understand, like, how does the spirit specifically speak to you? What does your intuition feel like? And really deepening that. So now that we've kind of cleared out a lot of these interferences and maybe these conditioned constructs, ideas, to really start to understand, okay, so like, how do I hear that voice of the divine speaking to me personally? And what does that look like? What does that feel like? What is the texture of that? And then we move into the final week, which is integration, where it's kind of the process of really going, okay, now that I've deepened this relationship with myself, what does it look like to really integrate that into day-to-day life? And what would be my highest joy, my highest experience of this? And what makes this so beautiful is that in this pathway, you will have lifetime access to these things. And so no matter where you're at on your journey, you can just begin the path again. And so once you get through that, you can allow yourself the opportunity to really just live in that new space of kind of deepened connection. But when it calls or when it feels alive in you, you can go back to starting again, deepening your environment of safety within yourself and with life, and moving back into deepening with presence and starting to expand your discernment and starting to open to aspects of remembrance that maybe you didn't previously know were there, and allowing yourself to become even more alive in your experience, and really allowing that embodiment to expand, and then reintroducing and developing even more intimacy with your body, with your inner authority, and back to integrating again. And so this really is here to meet you as a doorway to your own inner journey within. So kind of the hope is that after this pathway, you won't feel like you need anything else to allow you to access yourself, but anything else you use after this will be kind of out of a pure joy of exploration, of wanting to learn more about something or wanting to read a book, but not from the place that you need to do those things to feel whole, because you'll have the tools and the skill set to access that on your own. And so that just gives you a little deeper idea of what the material will look like and what those principles are that we'll be moving through in this practitioner pathway.